Hi, everyone, and welcome. We're thrilled to have you here today with us. I'm Madison Niceley, Customer Marketing Manager here at Bloomfire, and I will be your moderator this afternoon. We're excited you're here because we're diving into something that impacts every team, regardless of size, regardless of industry, and regardless of digital maturity, and that is tacit knowledge, the unwritten, experience-based know-how that fuels smart decisions, continuity, and innovation. And one of your most powerful yet most at-risk assets. We're joined today by Betsy Anderson, who leads our customer success team here at Bloomfire, and Busa Energy certified knowledge management specialists, Brandon Downing and Jeremy Meehleib. You've built a proven, repeatable process to protect and activate their organization's hard-earned knowledge. And a few quick housekeeping notes before we do get started. This session is being recorded. You'll receive an on-demand link shortly after we wrap, so you can revisit the discussion at your convenience and even share it across your team. We also want to hear from all of you, so please feel free to ask any questions in our Q&A chat and drop your questions in there and at any time during the session too, and we'll follow up with answers after our discussion as well. So today we'll unpack why tacit knowledge matters, how to spot the signs of risk, and what you can actually do to capture and share it without burning people out and rebuilding your tech stack. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. So let's start at the foundation. We throw around terms like tribal knowledge or institutional know-how, but let's get specific. How do you define tacit knowledge, and why is it so powerful and so easily lost across organizations? Betsy, we'll start with you.
Yeah, first of all, I'm really glad to be here today, so thanks for including me. I think this is a really critical topic. Also, fun fact, Brandon and I were in the same knowledge management course, so we go way back, and he's got some good ideas, so excited to join the Busa team today. Ultimately, tacit knowledge is everything that people know how to do, but don't realize is valuable because it is second nature. It's that technician who hears a subtle change in the machine and knows exactly how to pinpoint what's going on. It's that support rep who is just a master at de-escalating and can handle the angry customer with just that right tone. It's that kind of knowledge that often doesn't get written down because it lives in people's heads. And that's why it's vulnerable, because when somebody leaves the organization or changes roles, that knowledge leaves with them.
And Jeremy, I'd love to hear from you. Why is capturing the knowledge of your workforce essential? What are the implications of not doing so? What challenges have you seen when employees leave or transfer teams? And lastly, how does this impact knowledge continuity?
Sure. Thanks for having us, Madison and Betsy. Really, the overall approach to the idea of knowledge management is the promotion of continuity and common understanding of the business, its processes, and really easy access to learning across a business and its different working groups. Without that general access to the knowledge and the topics, people are heavily reliant on other people's networks, and implementing a knowledge management platform and principles normalize that access to information, so you're not relying on someone else to get you that first step to finding a resolution. So it just opens up the doors no matter what your position as an employee.
Yeah, exactly. And that tacit knowledge isn't something that you have to lose. It doesn't necessarily have to be gone when people leave. With Bloomfire, and especially through the lens of enterprise intelligence, teams can actively and proactively capture that tacit knowledge and that expertise, and how it can be shared in those real conversations, those debriefs, or everyday decision-making moments. Like, you can inject it into the flow of that work. And instead of knowledge disappearing when someone leaves, Bloomfire can help you preserve it and serve it up when other people need it. and really build almost this living network of insight that can grow stronger with every published contribution at the organization. I would say that capturing the knowledge of your workforce is really essential because it preserves that institutional memory, and then it allows you to build on it and accelerate decision making, and really reduces the reliance on just that handful of experts that could leave at any moment. When knowledge really remains in people's heads, it, like I said earlier, it just walks out the door when people leave, and they're taking those critical insights with them. And so that loss slows down productivity, it creates rework, it hinders onboarding, and especially in times of high turnover, without proper capture, organizations risk being stalled out on innovations, duplicating efforts, and they end up having this growing gap between what they know and what they can act on. Even if there was a ton of work done in the past, they kind of lose out on all of that.
Yeah, 100%, Betsy. So once you recognize just how valuable tacit knowledge is, from there, the next question is, how do you know it's at risk? What are the real world signals that knowledge is slipping away and slipping through the cracks at your organization?
Really, I think the biggest way is you'll hear the same questions being asked over and over again. Anytime a new person's onboarding or anytime a new person is trying the same task, you'll hear those same questions. Or you'll notice that people keep going to the same few subject matter experts, sort of the carriers of that knowledge. And they're the ones with the answers who, frankly, if they're the subject matter experts, they're probably good at their jobs, and they're already spread too thin because they own a lot of hats at the organization. Like, your experts end up being your best workers, and they're spread thin because everyone wants a piece of them. And so sometimes employees are hesitant to document what they know, and they're afraid that if they share everything, they'll lose their value. That's kind of the other side of that. So that mindset just in and of itself becomes a barrier to knowledge sharing unless leadership steps in.
And Brandon, with your focus on capturing your organization's collective expertise, how have you encountered hesitancy from employees to document that knowledge? And so can you help us understand why this is the case, and how you and your team have navigated that reluctance?
Sure, yeah, certainly. And thank you both, for having us today. We appreciate you giving us the chance to share what we've learned so far. And yes, we've definitely had, a challenge in collecting this tacit knowledge. Kind of as Betsy has said, most people, especially the people with the knowledge, are just too busy. They're being pulled in a dozen different directions because they're the people with the know-how, and they just don't have the time to commit to us or you in your endeavor to capture their tacit knowledge. It becomes not a priority for them. And then we also have those that feel that their tacit knowledge makes them as valuable as they are to the company. Sharing that in some way and us capturing it somehow makes them less valuable. They have the idea that if the company has the knowledge, then what do they need me for? Being the only person with the answers means job security. So handling both of these, I think the solution to both of these scenarios is getting support from upper management. It has to be an initiative to capture tacit knowledge, and it must come from management, and it must be a real priority, not just a talking point. Management has to send a clear message that we are actively capturing best practices, as well as offer incentives to those that are involved, that are sharing, the people with the know-how. And this forces the employees in both situations to make time for the effort to capture the knowledge.
Yeah, Brandon, you touch on something that I think is so a part of every organization, which is sort of the human side of knowledge management, where people are resistant not because they don't care, but they're resistant because either they're stretched too thin, or they don't really know the implications of sharing when it comes to diminishing their own value. And what we've seen across our customer base is that tacit knowledge is all about documentation, governance, reinforcement, and then the big all caps trust. It has to be one of the 5 core principles of enterprise intelligence because it's so critical to how people work and ultimately ensures that employee insight becomes an organizational asset, not a personal liability. If you think of it as an asset, and it should become that rather than being something that is a risk to your business. And I think, kind of to your point, when leadership makes knowledge sharing a strategic priority, and Bloomfire can help turn those insights into searchable, cited, and proactively surfaced assets, people can start to see that their contributions are both protected and impactful. So instead of them fearing, that they're going to be disposable, they see themselves as part of this connected intelligence network, if you will, one that gets smarter, faster, and more resilient every time an employee has an experience that folks can learn from.
Yeah, Betsy, I love how you frame that. When knowledge sharing is visibly supported by leadership and tied to a system that protects and elevates employee insights, something shifts inside the organization. People stop viewing it as a threat to their value and start seeing themselves as contributors to something bigger, a connected, intelligent organization, like you said. And that brings us to the next piece of our puzzle. So we've talked about the more human side, about trust and time and incentives, but making tacit knowledge actionable also requires a repeatable system. So one that does not rely on heroics, but on structure and actual process. So Jeremy, can you walk us through the actual process your team has implemented to capture that undocumented know-how, and what has helped you increase adoption, and how have you made it something repeatable and scalable?
Sure. So Brandon and I, we're part of the knowledge management team here at Busa, and we kind of put structure to this capturing of the tacit knowledge. And what we've settled upon is what we call a summit process. The first part of that process is just gathering a list of the topics or names of the processes that are important to the either business unit or a team, such as creating best practices for the electrical team. Both of those, we have a brainstorming session, lasts about 30 minutes to an hour, and we just put titles to the processes that are important to the business unit or the technical team that we're working with. We give that list back to them. They high grade it on the biggest impact and most importance to the business. They assign subject matter experts that are best suited to outline the process that we'll be working on. And then we set a face-to-face meeting where we work with the team or the business unit. And we walk through those outlines for each of those processes that they generated between that first step of brainstorming and the in-person group. With that second session, we've kind of put pen to paper on what that process is for them to then polish up, make sure that the follow-up read captures everything that is important to the process. Then we'll polish that up through the technical writing staff and have a finished document when it's all said and done. What this does, asking a business unit to come up with a process, it's kind of, well, where do I start? By being there to facilitate the discussion, facilitate the development of those processes as an outsider, it reduces the discomfort level with even talking about the process and makes it more collaborative effort with everybody in the room contributing equally to end up with that final product. We've found that having that open discussion with us as a contributor, helping navigate the meeting, fosters communication versus keeping it closer to their chest. So that two-step process, the summit process, has been very helpful for us in covering hidden parts of the process that ends up being that tacit knowledge you're talking about.
You know, Jeremy, I think what you've outlined with that summit process is such a powerful example of what it takes to move from good intentions to actual knowledge enablement and optimization for your organization. What's really standing out to me kind of as you're talking is how your team didn't wait for perfect documentation. You didn't let the perfect get in the way of the good. You created a space where expertise could emerge just through casual conversation. And that's the heart of unlocking tacit knowledge. People don't always know what they know until they talk it through with their peers. And you've built out a structure that surfaces that in a really efficient, but also what we were talking about earlier, a human way. It reminds me a little bit of that knowledge management practice of communities of practice. Some of the folks on the watching might be familiar with that term, but just creating a safe space where you can talk through things on a specific topic with people of shared interest or shared roles. And at Bloomfire, we've seen that structured participation unlocks that contribution. So when you give people a really clear prompt, here's the goal, and a safe setting and a purpose for sharing, they're more likely to engage, especially when it's framed as a collaborative event like your summit, not a solo homework assignment. These things really come out better through community. And when that captured knowledge is then made searchable, cited, and actively used by others, it sends a signal that what they shared matters, which again goes back to trusting your own contribution, and it kind of helps tamp down that fear element of I'm losing my value. And that feedback loop is so essential to building momentum and trust in the system. And what you've essentially done is operationalized the tacit to the explicit knowledge transition. And that is everything we're trying to do with enterprise intelligence, converting those hard to capture know-how or ideas into indexed and accessible and workflow ready assets that your whole organization can benefit from.
Betsy, so perfectly said, especially the idea that structure unlocks contribution. When people see their input not just collected, but cited, searchable, and used, it changes the entire energy around knowledge sharing at the end of the day. It becomes less about compliance and more about impact across your team and across your organization as a whole. So that leads perfectly into my next question. So Jeremy, Brandon, I'd love to go back in time for a moment. Before you had Bloomfire in place, what did your process look like? Were you relying on tools like SharePoint or other platforms? And then let's talk about the shift to how has Bloomfire helped optimize your ability to capture and share that tacit knowledge? Feel free to share like any data points or anecdotal stories you've seen firsthand since working with Bloomfire and having that platform too as a resource. And then finally, how has it changed the way your teams collaborate, especially across departments or during periods of high change? Would love to hear from you guys on all of those questions.
Sure, yeah. So initially, when we started out, trying to capture this tacit knowledge, there was no process. There were ideas, basically what the company wanted as far as knowledge to capture. There were good intentions. There were even very serious initiatives with hard timelines. But a process that worked, we had to come up with that on our own. And until we did come up with that process, we basically just did whatever we could. We tried to meet with the knowledgeable people that were in the company, the SMEs. We tried to contact them. Hopefully they were willing to respond. We begged them to share the information with us when they had time, which was really never. Once we finally did get that information from them, it was captured, reviewed, edited, approved, and published. That process alone took weeks to months in some cases because of, there were multiple people involved in that. And then we published on SharePoint. So SharePoint is a good place to create information and maybe have kind of working together on documents. But as far as sharing with an overall company, it's really not the best. It's not the best to get the right information to the right people. It's designed for office workers. It's not designed for the field. And even then, finding something without knowing the specific file address is next to impossible. Despite our best efforts, sharing these documents quickly led to either having outdated or different draft versions that we shared with people. They were being passed around. It essentially became, who did you know who had that document? Go on Teams and find the person that had the document. There were multiple people who treated these draft versions as the official versions, and knowing who to ask was the best way to get information. So we had to change that, and we turned to Bloomfire, and we built what we call Insight, but it's Bloomfire platform, along with our summit process that we developed, and this allowed us to establish that single source of truth. We've been very pleased. Insight is very intuitive. It's very simple to use, both as a reader, someone who reads the information on there, and as an author, somebody who's publishing information on there. So there's a variety of ways to find the information that they're looking for. And we weren't eliminating SharePoint. SharePoint is a good tool for what it's designed for, but we were building that knowledge center a step above that. SharePoint's down here for your draft documents, but Bloomfire becomes that source of truth that's above it. If it's not in Bloomfire, then it's not considered official. And the process to create and approve documents would have to be established with every single business group. We needed support for all of them. Every document that was going to be uploaded into this knowledge center had to be accurate, kept up to date, and so that we knew that those official versions were the official versions and they were accurate. And that's a lot of work, but it's certainly worth, having that single source of truth is worth the extra work.
Brandon, what you just described is something that we see so often. Doesn't matter the industry. It's teams that are just doing their absolute best with the tools that they have been given. And what ends up happening is they go back into this cycle of rework, confusion, and then ultimately delays. And it's not a lack of effort. It's a lack of alignment, and it's a lack of visibility. And that shift from publishing files, like you kind of referenced, to building a trusted, governed intelligence center is huge. And what's powerful about the way your team uses Bloomfire is that it's not just about storing information. It's about curating what's right, what's current, and to use your own words, what's official. And that's what creates a single source of truth. That's that trust layer. And when, from an enterprise intelligence standpoint, which I've been talking about a lot today, this is what it means to evolve from passive knowledge storage to active knowledge flow. You're enabling faster, more confident decisions, especially during high change periods. And that's really exactly where Bloomfire shines, giving people the confidence that what they're accessing isn't just available, but it's accurate, it's trusted, and it's meant for them.
Yeah, the way I think about it too, and Betsy, just to reiterate some of the points that you've already said, but the way that I always think about it is it's not just putting your information somewhere, right? It's about knowing that what you're looking at is in a trusted spot. So it's trustworthy, it's current, and it's actually usable too. And you can also go back and edit it so that as things change, it stays with the times as well. So that distinction between a storage platform and a real knowledge center is where the biggest transformation happens. And it's where organizations start to see that those ripple effects across collaboration, onboarding, and even strategic decision making as well. So let's bring this a bit full circle. So Jeremy, Brandon, if you were talking to a team that's just starting their journey towards capturing tacit knowledge, what advice would you give them? What would you tell them to focus on first? And what have you learned that you wish someone had told you at the beginning too?
Sure. Well, I think fundamentally it's about relationships. Having the great process is important, but people make it work. You have to build trust with from your stakeholders to your SMEs. So be prepared, be patient, respect their time that's so valuable. Meet in person when you can, not just on Teams all the time. Buy them lunch, say thank you, show them how this helps them and not just you and your team. Explain how it's a benefit to them, and then ask them what you can do for them in return. Do that consistently, and your most talented experts become long-term allies.
100%, Brandon. The other thing is make sure you get buy-in from management to ensure the business units involved know these efforts will contribute to the success of the business. And the business units are key to ensure resources are made available for the collection, capture, and creation of that knowledge management content. The knowledge management principles, they foster growth, efficiency, safety, and success. And having team members who can access information pertinent to their success makes everyone more efficient and ultimately more satisfied with their work experience. Also start with a single business unit of high impact, smaller business units that are eager to adopt the principles of knowledge management. Show you the first wins. It's always something to consider. Essentially, everyone knows the difference between a well-managed meeting and one that is not. As a KM team, we're there to make sure that those meetings that foster the tacit knowledge are successful. So it's not just on them. You're the outside source helping that be a success.
Yeah, Brandon, Jeremy, those are such great points. And when the KM team steps in as a facilitator and translator of team knowledge, the impact multiplies, as we've seen with the BUSA team here today and everything that they've shared with us. So it's really not just about capturing the information, it's about converting it into something valuable and, again, lasting, like we've mentioned. So the organizations that succeed long term are the ones that move from just managing knowledge to actually or managing it in a more passive way and activating or enabling it. And again, like consistently updating it and making sure that it is relevant to the time. So that's the shift enterprise intelligence brings. I know, Betsy, you've talked a lot about that concept today, and it treats tacit knowledge as a renewable asset that compounds over time. Betsy, you work with so many organizations that are early in their knowledge management journey, often unsure of where to begin or worried they're not doing it right. What would you say to those teams who are feeling overwhelmed or hesitant to take the first step in capturing tacit knowledge? And how can they start building momentum in a way that makes it feel doable?
Yeah, I was conscious of the fact when Brandon and Jeremy were talking, I was conscious of my vigorous nodding. So everything they said, for sure. And then I think mine kind of harkens back to something I said earlier. Don't let the perfect get in the way of the good. Start small, but start with purpose. A lot of organizations think they need this massive initiative or this perfectly polished framework before they can really begin capturing tacit knowledge. But what we've seen across so many Bloomfire customers, like the BUSA team, is that progress starts with consistency, not perfection. It's like a workout regimen. Like you don't have to do everything perfect. You just need to move. And I think it's similar here. If you can build moments into your team's day, like quick Q&A captures after a project wrap up, or giving shout outs for someone who shares a helpful tip, to give them that shout out, but also to encourage their sharing of tacit knowledge and to capture the tacit knowledge. Like a shout out can do a lot in just a couple of sentences. That's how you can start creating a culture where knowledge sharing feels natural and recognized. And don't underestimate the emotional side of this, the people side. Humans want to know that their expertise matters. They want to feel safe sharing the information. So it's just as important to design for trust as it is to design for process, because you can have the best process, but if people don't trust your intentions or the organization, then they're not gonna share. So the good news is, just speaking for us, you don't have to do it alone. When knowledge sharing is backed by your leadership in a real way and supported by a platform like Bloomfire, you're not just asking people to contribute, you're showing them that it's in their best interest, just like what Brandon was saying. It's for their good.
100%. So start small, but start with purpose really captures the spirit of what we've heard today, from building trust and consistency to creating a space for real-time knowledge sharing that actually works in the flow of your work too. And I think the most encouraging part is you don't have to boil the ocean to protect your organization's most valuable expertise. And with the right mindset, a little structure, and the support of leadership, you can unlock tacit knowledge in a way that's sustainable, scalable, and truly impactful too. So with that, I want to thank each of our panelists, Betsy, Brandon, Jeremy, for sharing not just strategies, but their firsthand experience and providing us with recommendations too, to go out and do everything that the BUSA team has done and see that success to multiply. And thank you to everyone who joined us today and sought to learn more on this topic. And whether you're just starting out or scaling what you've already built, we're excited to see all the success and how you build your own program too, and what makes sense for your organization. So as a quick reminder, you'll receive the on-demand recording shortly. And if you're ready to explore how Bloomfire can help you turn your organization's know-how into a living, searchable, trusted asset, we would love to connect. But until next time, take care and keep building your culture of knowledge sharing. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.